It is a dark day in Arizona. Just now, the Arizona Supreme Court issued its opinion in Planned Parenthood v. Mays, upholding one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country.
Arizona's Supreme Court has cleared the way for a near-total abortion ban. The court ruled that the state can enforce a law from 1864 that forbids abortions and punishes providers with prison time. The only exception in that law is to save a mother's life. I'm Stephanie Haney, and in this edition of In the News Now, we look deeper into the ruling on abortion in Arizona and explore where abortion rights stand in other parts of the country. We start with a closer look at what this historical decision in Arizona means. Colleen Sikora explains the ruling and when it could take effect.
Mixed reaction across Arizona.
A tremendous victory for unborn children and their mothers.
I'm devastated by this decision, and I know that many Arizonans are as well.
After the Arizona Supreme Court's ruling lifts a stay on a law on Arizona's books that would punish abortion providers with prison time, except in cases where an abortion is performed to save a mother's life. The majority opinion stating physicians are now on notice that all abortions, except those necessary to save a woman's life, are illegal, and that additional criminal and regulatory sanctions may apply to abortions performed after 15 weeks gestation. The Alliance Defending Freedom, representing Dr. Eric Hazelrig, an OBGYN and medical director of a pregnancy resource center in Arizona, petitioned the Supreme Court to reverse a lower court's ruling.
It prevented officials from fully enforcing the state's pro-life law to protect unborn children. Thankfully, today's ruling overturns that decision and recognizes that life is a human right. It allows Arizona to respect that right and fully protect life again, just as the legislature intended.
Hazelrig celebrating the decision for Arizona women and unborn babies.
Every one of them deserves real support and real health care.
Some of the state's top elected leaders criticizing the court's ruling, including Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays.
We will pursue every option available to us to ensure that this decision is never implemented in the state of Arizona.
Mays saying she will not or allow county attorneys to prosecute women or doctors for abortions. There's still questions on exactly when this could go into effect. Based on solely the Supreme Court's ruling, the near total ban begins again in 14 days, pending further court proceedings in Pima County Superior Court.
The issue is not over with. The 1864 ban is not yet fully litigated.
While Governor Katie Hobbs calls on lawmakers to take action.
I am calling on the legislature to do the right thing right now and repeal this 1864 ban and protect access to reproductive health care. The Republican majority in the legislature has time and again refused to act to protect our freedoms.
The state's governor, Katie Hobbs, and county attorney Rachel Mitchell are among many that are calling on Arizona lawmakers to repeal the Civil War-era abortion ban. Erica Stapleton talked with lawmakers to hear their thoughts on the issue.
This isn't what the people of Arizona or the people of this country want.
Democratic Senator Eva Birch, one of many lawmakers backing Governor Katie Hobbs, calling for a repeal of Arizona's 1864 abortion law that bans all abortions except to save the life of the mother and could criminalize abortion providers. This coming after an Arizona Supreme Court decision Tuesday that the law, enacted before Arizona was even a state, is enforceable. Birch impacted on a personal level, sharing she had an abortion just a few weeks ago after learning her pregnancy failed.
Somebody gave me a procedure so that I wouldn't have to experience another miscarriage, the pain, the mess, the discomfort. And now we're talking about whether or not we should put that doctor in jail.
Dems have long been calling for the repeal of the 1864 law. Representative Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton even put out a bill this session that would do just that, but it went nowhere.
It never got a hearing in committee. It never got discussed. It certainly did not go up on that board.
Convincing the Republican majority legislature now might still come with challenges. A joint statement from Senate President Warren Peterson and House Speaker Ben Toma reads in part, "During this time, we will be closely reviewing the court's ruling, talking to our members, and listening to our constituents to determine the best course of action for the legislature." Republican Representative Matt Gress, however.
And I made it very clear that this decision cannot stand. This territorial law is very concerning and should be repealed.
He's not alone. State Senators T.J. Shope and Shauna Bollock, among other Republicans sharing calls to repeal the territorial ban. but support another state law that bans abortion after 15 weeks, which passed in 2022.
What would you say to a fellow Republican who says, no, we don't need to repeal the 1864 ban?
To tell a woman that she may not get an abortion under any circumstance unless her life is in danger or else we're going to jail you and the doctors, that's not a workable policy.
Former Governor Doug Ducey, a Republican who signed that 2022 law, also weighing in, tweeting in part that this court decision was not the outcome he would have preferred. Some critics accusing Republicans of walking their stances back.
I think all of us are in agreement that the appropriate place to discuss and decide the policy of abortion is here on the state level, here in Arizona, in our communities. I don't think that that's a contradiction at all.
On Wednesday, both Arizona legislative chambers attempted to start to repeal the 1864 abortion ban, but neither were successful. Colleen Sikora is back with us now to break down what happened when some lawmakers tried to get things moving to get this law off the books.
On the House floor, competing motions by two Republican members, one by Representative Matt Gress to begin to repeal the 1864 abortion ban, quickly stopped by Representative David Livingston to recess.
All in favor of that motion, vote aye. Aye. All opposed, vote no. Ayes have it, so ordered.
During recess, shouting continued.
I believe that we should be repealing the territorial law. It is unconscionable.
Representative Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, a Democrat, is the one who introduced the bill months ago.
Every day we come into this chamber, we can make that motion to create a temporary rule to get it up on that board.
Coming back from recess. Do you think you'd have the votes in order to do what you were trying to do earlier?
We will see. I think that there are some interests in procedural wrangling. I think we should take this up urgently and as soon as possible.
Stahl-Hamilton brings the motion again.
And I request a roll call vote.
But the House adjourns.
The House will stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, April 17th, 2024.
Do you believe that you'll get a vote?
I do.
The governor calling the action by House Republicans unconscionable.
And fellow Republicans blaming Gress for putting Republican comrades in the line of fire in the Senate.
That is a question for you. All those in favor vote aye. Opposed vote no. Here's the ayes have it, do have it, so ordered. Division has been called.
Democrats stand to be recognized to, as they say, try to start the repeal of the 1864 abortion ban as the chamber is going to adjourn.
I hear you. I hear you. The motion was made and it was adopted. We are adjourned.
But aren't recognized, and the Senate adjourns.
Senator Hernandez was ready with her motion. Several people called division. I called for a substitute motion. As soon as the motion to adjourn was made, I called for a substitute motion. And that is also in order. But instead, they packed up their bags.
A GOP spokesperson telling 12 News the Democrats were not recognized because the motion before the body was the motion to adjourn. A substitution motion would have been procedurally improper.
Following the ruling, anchors Mark Curtis and Caribe Divine at our Arizona station spoke with a pro-abortion rights advocate to get her thoughts on the court's ruling and what she thinks this means for the state.
We are joined now by Cheryl Bruce, campaign manager for Arizona for Abortion Access. Thanks so much for joining us today. First, we want to get your reaction to today's ruling, and did it surprise you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And our reaction today is just that we are absolutely devastated by this ruling. We were surprised. I mean, to take the state back to a Civil War era ban that was on the books before women even had the right to vote is frankly unbelievable and unacceptable. And the Arizona for Abortion Access campaign remains resolved that now more than ever, we have got to see this through, and we need to pass this constitutional amendment this fall on the ballot.
There's no doubt that this will be a hot button issue in November, maybe the hot button issue. But are you surprised or disappointed that more noise hasn't come from women's groups about restrictive abortions, the rolling back of Roe v. Wade? And does that noise need to be turned up before November?
So I think what we are seeing is women and men and all Arizonans are very supportive of this issue and protecting the right to access abortion. We're out in the signature gathering phase of our campaign right now, and we announced last week that we have collected more than 500,000 signatures. We've seen an influx of calls and emails into the campaign today for people asking where they can go sign, asking to volunteer. So I think this is an issue that is at the forefront of voters' minds, and that it will be very important this fall, and that people are already well aware that politicians here in Arizona, as well as the courts, are trying to take this right away from them.
And what would that amendment on the ballot look like? What are some of the specifics on that?
Yeah, sure. So it protects abortion up till fetal viability, and it puts the woman, the decision squarely into the hands of a woman and her doctor and her family, and it takes it out of the hands of politicians.
Yeah.
Which we feel, obviously, in light of today's ruling, as well as some things the legislature has done here in the past, is very important.
Yeah, Justice Lopez, wrote in his ruling that physicians are on notice. They could potentially be prosecuted, go to prison even for a couple of years. What kind of predicament does that put doctors and patients in?
Yeah, there is in the 1864 ban criminal penalties for providers, abortion providers. So I think it leaves a lot of uncertainty, essentially, right? Like, until we get this ballot measure passed this fall, essentially there's a near total ban, and women will not be able to have the right to access an abortion here in state for any reason. Exceptions for rape and incest are not brought into consideration. Health of the mother, miscarriage, those are all things that now will not be put into thought when a woman is seeking to have an abortion and she's having that decision and that conversation with her doctor and medical provider.
Can we just address the other side, though? You heard Jake, who was on here before you came on, and he said there's nothing more precious than life. He appreciates and loves the fact that he lives in a state that now respects that. What do you say to the people who say you should not take a human life in utero at any point?
That's not where the majority of Arizonans, or frankly, the majority of Americans, are on this issue. People want the freedom to decide, and I think that we've seen since Dobbs the reaction and the backlash that type of a stance has had. And I think that it's convenient for Jake to say that when, again, he's upholding a law that was on the books before women in this country even had the right to vote.
All right, Cheryl Bruce, thank you so much for joining us in studio. We appreciate it.
Mark and Caribe also talked with someone on the other side of the issue, an anti-abortion attorney. Here's their conversation with Jake Warner from the Alliance Defending Freedom.
As an attorney, don't you think we can do better, and that we've advanced further as a society than a law that was written in 1864 that makes no exceptions for victims of rape or incest?
Life is a human right. States are well within their power to protect life from the moment of conception. Think about these unborn children. Think about what we've learned over the past 50 years. These unborn children, they develop heartbeats at the age of 6 weeks, fingers and toes at 8 weeks, and their unique fingerprints at 10 weeks. The Arizona people we've long protected human life, and it's a good thing that we've done that.
Yeah, but 1864, Jake, I mean, come on, we have come further. I'm not saying that there should be unbridled access to abortion at whatever point, but we surely can do better than 1864.
Well, the law protects human life from the moment of conception. Life is a human right, and any government should be proud of its efforts to protect life as much as possible.
Now, former Governor Ducey said that today's ruling is not the outcome that he would have preferred. Why are you against the 15-week ban that the former governor signed just a couple of years ago?
Well, Arizona has long protected life from the moment of conception. If you look back at the 2022 law that Governor Ducey signed, that law said that the 15 weeks law does not repeal Arizona's older pro-life law. It creates no right to an abortion, and it makes no unlawful abortion legal. So it was very clear from the legislature back then that life is a human right and it's worth protecting.
I was looking on your website today, Jake. It's Alliance Defending Freedom, and it's interesting that an organization that has freedom in its title wants to take the reproductive freedom of a woman away with no exceptions.
Well, think about the right to life. Life is a human right. There's always more than one person in the picture here. And we think it's well within the reason of the Arizona people to protect life from the moment of conception. And we applaud the court's decision today.
Now, Attorney General Chris May, she says that she's not going to prosecute a woman. She's not going to prosecute a doctor, basically saying she's not going to enforce this abortion ban. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's not her call in the end. Local prosecutors have discretion to enforce this law, and we believe that just as the Arizona Supreme Court said today, this law should be fully enforceable within 14 days.
Do you have daughters, Jake?
Absolutely.
And does it not worry you as a father that if, God forbid, your daughter was raped, that there would be no recourse for her in Arizona based on this law?
That's always a tragic situation. That would be absolutely awful. But at the same time, we shouldn't compound that tragedy by adding another to it. I'm very thankful to live in a state that protects life from the moment of conception.
Without exception.
Except to save the mother's life.
But
There is that
without exception in terms of rape or incest?
Well,
it just seems draconian.
We shouldn't compound one tragedy and add it to the other. We should be willing to protect life from the moment of conception, and I'm thankful that I live in a state that does that.
Now, shortly after today's ruling, Kamala Harris is going to make a visit to Arizona. Do you think that the pro-life versus pro-choice argument is going to be the deciding factor in the November election?
I don't know what's going to be the deciding factor this November. It's my hope that this decision and other things around the country will encourage voters to affirm that life is a human right if they live here in Arizona or somewhere else.
Let me just finish with this, and apologies to our producer, but I did want to get this in. What about the separation of church and state, Jake? You want more expansion, and this is on your website, of Christian practice in our classrooms, in government, and you want to curtail LGBTQ rights. Shouldn't that be a freedom as well?
That's certainly not what this case is about.
No, it isn't what the case is about, but it's what your organization stands for.
Listen, we're the world's largest ministry dedicated to advancing religious freedom, free speech, protecting parental rights, and protecting marriage and the family. We've won 15 cases at the U.S. Supreme Court since 2011, and we're proud of our work
But if you're
defending freedom here in America.
If you're pushing Christian values on everyone, how is that freedom?
These are freedoms that protect all people, not just those who agree with us. Think about our decision that we won at the U.S. Supreme Court as recently as last year. It affirmed the freedom of everyone to speak consistent with their beliefs, and that protects even people who don't agree with us on many issues.
All right. Jake, thank you for coming down tonight. This is certainly going to be a contentious issue, and I'm sure we have not heard the end of this.
Thanks for having me tonight.
We appreciate it.
The state Supreme Court's decision is likely to impact the November election. Bianca Buono talked with experts who say the decision will bring even more voters to the polls in Arizona.
Minutes after Arizona's Supreme Court ruled to uphold the Civil War-era abortion ban, November's election was top of mind.
This is going to have a deep and lasting impact on politics in Arizona.
And Stan Barnes, president of Copper State Consulting Group, says it's Republican candidates who could pay the price.
If you are interested in Republican success at the ballot, this is a bad day.
Barnes describes Arizona's Republican Party as fractured, and while Democrats are united when it comes to their stance on abortion, the GOP is not.
We've had the Trump wing versus the McCain wing. Now we have the pro-life wing versus the more pragmatic pro-choice wing. And if it was complicated for Republicans in terms of running for office in this environment, it's now even more complicated.
And the issue of abortion drives voter turnout.
There are no doubt voters all over Arizona who are going to hear this story and say, what? We've gone from legal abortion to illegal abortion in one decision? Which party is going to fix that?
Cheryl Bruce believes she has the fix.
Access to abortion is a majority support issue.
She's the campaign manager for Arizona for Abortion Access, an effort trying to put abortion rights on the November ballot, giving voters the choice between the 1864 near total ban or enshrining abortion rights in the Arizona Constitution. As of last week, they had collected 500,000 signatures, well above the 383,000 required. And Bruce says they were flooded with calls and emails after Tuesday's decision. Evidence voters are motivated.
We're feeling very confident. I don't want to take away from the devastating news today. This is a near total ban, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to vote on this measure until November. But I do think that we are seeing even more of a resolve now from voters in Arizona to pass this measure.
Now let's look beyond Arizona as abortion rights are being fought over in many states across the country. In Florida, abortion access will also impact the November ballot. Amendment 4 is on the state's ballot, and if approved, it would guarantee abortion access in Florida up to 24 weeks after conception. This is in contrast to the state's new 6-week abortion restriction, so a lot of range there. Now, Renata DiGregorio has more on what's on the ballot for Florida voters.
The Florida Supreme Court will allow Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 to go to voters. Amendment 3 would allow marijuana to be bought for recreational use for people at least 21 years old. Amendment 4 would protect abortion access, making it so Florida laws could not restrict abortion, quote, before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health, which the healthcare provider would determine. But it's not all a win for abortion access advocates. The Supreme Court also ruling Monday to uphold Florida's 15-week abortion ban, which now triggers a 6-week ban that was in limbo due to litigation.
Happiness that we're letting Floridians decide.
Jacksonville doctor Nancy Stotts says the 6-week ban is effectively a total ban that will impact women in Florida and neighboring states. Here she is after the opinions.
It's half a tic-tac at 6 weeks. So the problem is we have other laws that also make it difficult. You have to visit a physician twice. You have to have an ultrasound, et cetera, et cetera. So a 6-week ban is pretty much a total ban.
Anti-abortion advocate Andrew Shervill with Florida Voice for the Unborn calls the 6-week ban a silver lining.
I think there's a lot riding on this. Of course, number one concern is babies' lives.
Shervill believes with the amendment, there will be loopholes to allow abortions at late stages of pregnancy.
And that is something that's very problematic and something that Florida voters, I think, need to be made aware of.
Both Shervill and Stotts believe the abortion amendment will drive voters to the polls.
Abortion access is also putting a spotlight on the presumptive presidential candidates in the November election. Following the Arizona ruling, presumptive GOP nominee Donald Trump said that ban goes too far. But there has been talk of Trump supporting a nationwide abortion ban. So is that true? Marcia Keeley verifies.
Former President Trump and President Biden are preparing for a rematch in the 2024 presidential election this year, and one of Biden's first campaign ads makes a direct claim about his opponent's stance on the issue of abortion.
Now, in 2024, he's running to pass a national ban on a woman's right to choose.
So let's verify. The campaign ad references a Rolling Stone article from February. That article references an article from the New York Times claiming Mr. Trump privately supported a 16-week nationwide ban on abortion with exceptions for rape, incest, and saving the life of the mother. In the past, Trump has taken credit for the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade in 2022, saying the 3 conservative justices he appointed made the difference in that decision and in the Dobbs v. Jackson ruling that left abortion policy up to the states. It's referenced in the ad.
Because for 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
As for his support of a nationwide ban on abortion, the former president had this to say in a video posted to Truth Social this week.
My view is now that we have abortion where everybody wanted it from a legal standpoint, the states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land. In this case, the law of the state.
In that video, Mr. Trump reiterated his support for exceptions to any law, but did not directly address if he'd sign a nationwide ban or how long after conception he thinks the ban should be in place. But last month, the former president made this statement on a radio show.
The number of weeks now, people are agreeing on 15, and I'm thinking in terms of that, and it'll come out to something that's very reasonable.
On the tarmac during a visit to Atlanta, the former president was asked if he would sign a nationwide ban on abortion if it passed Congress. It now appears the claim in Biden's ad is false.
Speaking of politics and the presidency, Vice President Kamala Harris became the first vice president to tour an abortion clinic in March when she visited a Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Paul, Minnesota. John Croman was there for the tour.
The vice president said she wanted to visit this clinic in St. Paul to call attention to the states that are still welcoming women in search of reproductive care, including abortions. This is the latest stop on what Harris is calling the Fight for Reproductive Freedom Tour. This Planned Parenthood North Central states has seen a 100% increase in the number of women coming here from other states for abortions. This stop was also historic because no president or vice president has ever visited a women's clinic that also provides abortions.
I think we should all expect, and certainly we all desire, that you will be treated with dignity. And you'll be treated in an environment where you feel safe. And by that, I mean safe to be free from judgment.
After leaving the clinic, Harris stopped by Central High School to talk to female athletes on her way to a private fundraiser. In response to the vice president's visit, the Minnesota Citizens Concern for Life put out a statement saying that Minnesotans are not comfortable with this being an abortion tourism state, as they called it, and they think that the Biden administration remains committed to the most extreme abortion policies. In St. Paul, John Croman, KARE 11 News.
Also in March, the United States Supreme Court heard a case looking to limit access to the abortion pill mifepristone. This is a key medication used in more than 60% of abortions in the country. It was first approved more than 2 decades ago. Cornelius Hawker talked with a law professor about what the outcome of the case could mean for people around the country.
People protested outside the Supreme Court as the justices prepared to hear arguments in a case that could significantly restrict access to mifepristone. It's one of the most closely watched cases of this session.
I listened to the whole thing. I set my alarm so I would be up and ready.
Seattle U law professor Dr. Deirdre Bowen lays out what it would mean if the court decides to roll back FDA approval on the drug.
Medical abortions would no longer be available through the mail or be able to be prescribed by doctors through telehealth.
That kind of access to abortion would also be limited in Washington, even though it would still be legal to get the pill or procedure in person. People in states where abortion is already illegal, like Idaho, would face even more hurdles to get the pill.
If the doctors think that they're prescribing to someone in Washington state and it turns out the person is actually in Idaho, they are now exposed to criminal liability.
A little deja vu-y, I'd say.
Sarah Dixit with Pro-Choice Washington says headlines suggesting SCOTUS seems skeptical of the challenge doesn't reassure her or many in favor of abortion rights. So they'll continue their work.
Having justices decide the scientific basis of how medication is approved seems out of the purview of the court, but we've been surprised before by some of the rulings.
Dr. Bowen says for now, people have a workaround, the pill, in states that have banned abortion. But for how long is the question.
This may not be the case that's going to get this banned, but there's a federal law that someone else can bring, a new administration, for example, and have it enforced and have it applied.
The U.S. Supreme Court has not yet ruled on this case. When the justices do hand down their decision, we'll be sure to let you know, and we'll keep you updated on what's happening in Arizona as the battle over abortion rights continues. Thanks for watching this edition of In the News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney.